Welcome to the Station Wagon. I'm the older brother, Mark.
And I'm little sister Julie. This is the podcast where my brother and I give up something we take for granted and tell you how it goes.
Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hi everyone, in this episode of the Station Wagon, we're going to be giving up eating utensils.
That's right, we are no longer going to eat utensils.
Right, I think that's really important before we go much further, that we typically don't eat our utensils, that this is going to be giving up utensils used to eat with.
Yeah, we're going to go without forks, knives, sporks, spoons, etc.
Before we do anything like that, we should define what eating utensils are.
Yeah, let's define them. If you have ideas of things we could be giving up, please email your topic suggestions to wagonpodcast@gmail.com. Shout out to us on Twitter. We're at wagonpod, or connect with us on Facebook. So, Mark, what are utensils?
Utensils are tableware implements for cutting and eating food. But that's a really narrow definition, like a Western definition, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But here's some examples based on this definition. You may have heard of some of these things. Fork, knife, spoon.
Spoon? Did you say?
Yeah. Spoon, you might remember, is actually the battle cry of the tick.
Nope, way over my head.
Okay, you can look it up. Have you ever heard of trongs or a sporf?
No.
So the list can go on and on and on, but it's pretty narrow because eating utensils could also include things like, well, your fingers, right? Chopsticks.
Yep.
But chopsticks, if you've ever used them, which hopefully you have since you're a grown adult, you don't actually use them for chopping.
Or sticking.
You use them to pick up already cut pieces of food. So really, we should broaden that definition. Tableware implements for cutting and or eating food that have been manufactured or some other way procured.
Okay, fair enough.
So now that you know what they are you ready to take your knowledge check?
I am.
What is a chork? What type of eating utensil is a chork?
Well, first of all, it sounds like a made-up curse word that we should have used in our last episode. Chainmail fork?
Chainmail fork?
I don't know.
Well, how did you get that out of chork?
Chainmail? It was the first a chair fork. I don't know.
Okay, so like after this episode, you're going to go out a LARPing or something? No, that's wrong.
No.
That's wrong. A chork is actually a combo of chopsticks and a fork. And this is actually a little buzz marketing because a chork is the name brand. You can go buy them on Amazon or wherever. But on one end are chopsticks, and on the other end is a fork.
Okay.
People who, I guess, need that if you're uncertain about your chopstick prowess.
We're going to have a lot of portmanteaus in this episode, I think.
I have no idea what you just said.
That's when you take two different words and put them together, like chopsticks and fork becomes chork. Wait, what did you say?
Nothing.
Okay, next question.
Next question. In the American style of eating, which is obviously the best style, which hand initially holds the knife and which holds the fork?
Okay, it's funny. I mean, I do this every day, but I have to think for a second. So let me pretend I'm cutting my computer. Let's see. So Knife in the right, fork in the left?
Yeah.
Why are you so surprised?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about how I do it now, and when I stick something with a fork, I guess I do the same thing. Okay, and then what happens?
And then you move the fork to your right hand and stick the food in your mouth.
Right. How do you know this?
Because Mom always said that she wanted us to be ready if we ever needed to dine with the president.
Really? She said that?
Well, she told me that. I don't know about you.
I don't know. So for me, right. So you got your knife in your right hand, fork in the left, and you're holding the food on the plate with the fork tines down, of course, and make yourself a single bite of food, like you said. And then you set the knife down, you move the fork to the right hand, or from the left to the right, and then you stick it in your mouth.
I know, it's kind of ridiculous if
I
I
don't
think
do
about
that. I actually just keep the food on my left hand fork and cram it into my cake hole.
Well, you are left-hand dominant. You're a lefty.
I am, that's true. You just said that in a really ridiculous way. Who talks like that?
Okay, next question. Come on, keep them coming.
Which of the following can influence the way food tastes to you? The kind of utensil, the color of the utensil, or the material the utensil is made out of?
I guess the color, because
Is that your final answer?
blue.
Actually, all three. So obviously the first thing that people used was their fingers. You find that Tyrannosaurus Rex, you kill it and eat it. And you just pull it apart with your fingers.
Right.
Humans could find bowl-shaped things that were just naturally occurring. Clamshells, horns lying on the ground, rocks that had, bowls shaped in them from the rain or water. And they would use those to drink with or to carve things out or bring other foods to their mouth. When they went to the Old Country Buffet, they would take out their little clamshell and they probably had it on a string around their neck or something. And then about 500,000 years ago in the Paleolithic period, things like stone knives were used for meat and fruit. They also connected wood sticks to hollowed out stones or other pieces of wood. And fire was around, so they actually used these things to tend food as it was cooking. So that was pretty smart, I thought. Horns were used as cups. So that was pretty 500,000 years ago, right? I mean, you got to give them some props.
Sounds like something that would happen in Portland. The stone knives.
That 12,000 to 3,000 BCE Neolithic period, which my 11-year-old tells me means the new stone era.
I love her.
They developed more modern knives. They had handles and they were covered in wood or animal skin for grip. So good on them so you don't get splinters in your hand. Then like 1000 BCE, China started using chopsticks. So here's a big question. Why did China start using chopsticks? Do you have a guess?
To prevent being burnt?
Actually, that's a really good point. Most eating utensils started being used first as cooking preparation utensils.
Oh, okay.
And to prevent themselves from being burnt while they were cooking. And that is, definitely why chopsticks were used initially. And then about 500 BCE were seen being used for eating because of scarcity of resources and a high level of population. They didn't have lots of firewood for cooking, so they pre-chopped their food and then cooked it really quickly, overheat as quick as they could to not use resources. And because of that, the using something else like a knife was not necessary for actually eating. You didn't need to poke your food and stick it in your mouth. You could grab it really nicely with the chopsticks. And then also Confucius came into play too with a quote like this: "The honorable and the upright man keeps well away from both the slaughterhouse and the kitchen, and he allows no knives on his table." And then we have the Bronze Age, better utensils like 300 BCE to 400 AD. And then during the Iron Age, which was 400 to 1000, we got sharp-tipped knives were introduced.
Oh, yeah.
The table. And then after Rome crashed, we started the Middle Ages. And so that was like 500 AD-ish. And so, again, my daughter informs me that we lost all knowledge of how to make good eating utensils and went back to using like wooden spoons. And then I'm going to fast forward here. So 1500, we get spoons in Europe. And then 1700s, the fork started to become commonplace. But prior to that, people didn't like forks. The church didn't like it. And there was a quote: "God in his wisdom has provided man with natural forks, his fingers. Therefore, it's an insult to him to substitute artificial metal forks for them when eating."
Jason, my amazing husband, read me a passage from a play he's reading right now where an English guy is making fun of Italians for using forks. And Jace, was it in the 1600s?
1607.
1607. Volpone, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Cool.
And then in the 1900s, the fork becomes the supreme ruler of Western eating society.
Do you have a reference for that?
I do have a reference
no.
and a quote. As one 1887 Book of Manners puts it, "The fork has now become the favorite and fashionable utensil for conveying food to the mouth."
The type of utensils does make a difference. In inpatient wards, they're trying to make a push to have nicer utensils. And in detention centers and even prisons and places like that, some people think that food is tastier when you use your hands. Finger food is used in some dementia inpatient wards because it seems to help the residents eat more. And that's a major difficulty.
So it's not like a kinesthetic difficulty that they have. It just really, it tastes better when they use their fingers.
It's probably a little bit of both. Probably part of it is just it's difficult as dementia progresses to use knives and forks, etc., especially the long process that you described earlier. Finger foods are just easier to pick up and eat. So let's talk about safety of hands versus utensils. When we were talking about this beforehand, we were thinking utensils are the neatest and tidiest. So there's this really gross, disgusting study where they looked at how much feces and E. coli are there on utensils versus on our hands.
Oh man, was this in the MythBusters too? I think I saw that there.
I don't know, but
that's where I see my academic papers on MythBusters. Okay, go ahead.
So this was done in an extremely rural area. I think this was in Bangladesh.
Was it like Granger, Washington?
Yeah, it was in Granger, Washington. But this study was just on kids. It wasn't on adults. And on the kids, they found that there was less E. coli and feces on their utensils than on their hands. So if you have like disgusting children around you, or I guess any children around you,
right?
You can't be assured that their hands have been washed perfectly. It's likely that the utensils near them have less fecal matter on them than their hands do, and so it's probably safer for them to be using forks.
That was really hard for you to get out. That was awesome.
But for adults, perhaps our hands are safer because you can use proper hand washing and you know where your hands have been. You don't necessarily know where that utensil has been. Imagine taking your fork and instead of putting the tines in your mouth, just kind of sucking on the other end of it. That sounds really gross to us, but that's pretty much what you're doing with the tines of the fork.
I think you should not get into all that.
So anyway, for kids, utensils make sense. For adults, I don't know. There's a lot of countries and cultures where we still eat with hands.
Right. And one thing we're going to have to talk about is, are we going to still allow the use of injera?
I wanted to talk about that too. Okay, yes. So when I'm talking about eating with hands, and when I'm talking about that in the research I've read, I am including using things like injera or naan. Okay, another safety issue. Eating with hands might prevent you from burning your mouth because by picking it up with your fingers, you know the temperature of it. Also, there's potentially some dental issues. Looks like overbites became much more common once Westerners started using forks to eat.
So you're saying that when we move from using fingers to feed our faces, we started getting more overbites?
Yes.
Wow.
Also, chopsticks can cause arthritis, which is kind of sad.
May cause arthritis. So the billions of people who use chopsticks?
It's some elderly people who use chopsticks are more prone to certain kinds of arthritis.
Really?
You know, any kind of repetitive motion that you do over and over again can cause some problems.
So interesting.
So some indicate that using your fingers and hands and things like injera and nacho chips to eat, that's how I'm planning on getting through the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Okay. It can induce more mindful eating, that you're more aware of what you're eating. When you're just forking it in, you don't have to really think about each bite.
Right. We have said that we're going to give up eating utensils, but are we going to...
I just keep thinking you mean like chomp on a fork.
Well, what would you say?
Flatware.
Okay, we're going to be giving up eating utensils. Are we just giving up Western utensils? In other words, are chopsticks going to be okay since we're Westerners?
I use chopsticks on the reg. I'm going to give up chopsticks too.
Okay, I will too. Toothpicks?
So like serving utensils are different from like eating.
Okay, so we don't have a problem with serving or cooking utensils.
Right, that was my big question. What about cooking? And I say let's continue to cook with utensils.
Yeah, there's a definite line. Like, so yes, forks are used for cooking, chopsticks are used for cooking, but they tend to be longer, sharper, more durable than the kinds of things that you would use to eat with.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we giving up things like using bread, chips, crackers to eat other foods with? Like for lunch, typically what I'll have is like a little piece of cheese and some and like some hard-boiled eggs and some crackers or some chips, and I will like tear off a chunk of cheese and stick it onto my chip, and the chip now serves as an eating utensil. Oh, actually, it's like one half of a sandwich, I suppose, because it's like an open-faced chip cheese sandwich. Is that an eating utensil?
No, it's not.
All right.
It's not prefab. And
Whoa. So are you saying if I used a clamshell to eat with instead of a spoon, that'd be all right?
well, that's what I was wondering. I mean, can I go outside and get some sticks off the ground and like use that to make my own chopsticks so I can eat rice?
Well, the word make gives it away. So anytime you have to make something, no.
Okay.
I also think anytime you have to procure something.
Okay, but I do think like using chips. Okay, so I'm planning on making chili later this week, and I'm gonna eat it with potato chips as my delivery mechanism. I think that's okay because it's like injera.
Well, we haven't decided. So that whole class of eating utensils, that's actually an edible utensil that you're supposed to eat with.
I think edible utensils are fine.
Why?
How else am I gonna eat chili? I can't really like pour. I mean, soup.
You could drink it from the bowl.
I can't. My chili that I make is amazing but very thick.
And the bowl would become a utensil in that sense.
Oh, yeah, it sure would.
Right? You could stick your face right into it.
I could, but I'm not gonna. I
All
want to
right.
hear more about your amazing chip cheese sandwich.
I think that we should agree to allow edible utensils into this.
Okay.
As long as they are not edibly designed utensils.
Right. Don't go out and like buy a chocolate fork.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, actually a 2-week break, while you listen to the Pleasure Kills, and then we'll fill you in on our amazing success.
I was at a friend's house eating dinner with their family, and you never eat with your left hand there. That's not appropriate. So you only eat with your right hand. And I was eating my dinner, and I wanted more of something, but I felt like I was in this conundrum because I knew I wasn't supposed to use my left hand to reach for anything, but I also knew my right hand was now completely dirty because I had food all over it, and I didn't know how to reserve myself.
I think it would have been easier if I didn't have the sauce feeling of almost a knee-jerk reaction that I have sauce in my hand and I'm not supposed to clean it. Instead, I'm just supposed to continue eating. I wasn't doing it right.
And another part of eating in Nepal is you wash with your left hand and you eat with your right hand. But I'm left-handed, so I naturally wanted to eat with my left hand. I tried to eat with my right hand most of the time because, I mean, there's even like you're not supposed to like give your left hand to anybody when you shake it or anything because you don't want to get your poop germs on them or whatever.
It's just not polite table manners to eat with your fingers sometimes.
Probably make me a little uncomfortable. I might ask if you need a fork or a spoon or a knife. I'd be curious, though, of why you're doing what you're doing. Not that different's bad, it's different. Be curious of why you're being different.
That's primitive. That's going back to the Dark Ages before the invention of the runcible spoon. Don't know if you're aware of the runcible spoon, otherwise known as a spork, right? Medieval invention, increased civilization. So without a spork, what do you get? You get spaghetti bolognese in your hand.
Thank you, Anna, Emily, Molly, Elsa, Todd, and Nigel.
Welcome back, everybody. It's August 31st, and this is the second half of our recording on giving up eating utensils. How's it going, Julie?
I have to admit, I'm pretty glad that this challenge is over.
Oh, my gosh. You know what? This was, the standing one was really hard physically, but this was challenging because it took me away from my favorite thing, which is eating cereal at night.
Really? That was what was so hard about it?
Well, that and salad. Like I had some salad once at work, but I didn't want to do it forced me to, when we went out to a restaurant, I had to eat a veggie burger and fries instead of a nice salad because I didn't feel like making a complete jackalope out of myself at the restaurant. Yeah.
I did make a complete jackalope out of myself.
You did?
At one point at work, we had cake and ice cream.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I ate it with my fingers.
Oh, awesome. So was this the kind of thing where everybody knew what you were up to?
Yeah, totally.
Right. So now at work, people pretty much know, most of my friends know what I'm up to and stuff. But yeah, so what was hard for you about this?
In general, it was pretty easy. I didn't mind using my fingers. I had fun going to an Indian restaurant and, just using naan there. And at home was really the hardest thing because it grossed out my husband so much.
Wait, it did?
Yeah.
Which part? Like the actual scooping up of the food or the cramming it in your cake hole?
He a couple times ate in a different room than me.
What? He actually couldn't sit? That's awesome. So Kendra intentionally served me things to make my life difficult.
Like what?
One night we ordered Chinese food from my favorite Chinese place, and she was like, "Hey, Mark, pick up the Chinese food on your way home from work." And so I did, got it home, all set up, and I was like, "Oh, wait a second. What am I supposed to do?" So she got mushu, which is really good. It has a little, wrapper thing, so that was okay. But then she was like, "Ha, ha, ha, wait till you try out the kung po tofu."
Oh, no.
Let's see. We also had ice cream at Mom's house.
Oh, my gosh. What did you do?
She knew about this, of course, and she brought me an ice cream cone. And I started eating that.
That's
And
so sweet.
and again, Kendra stepped up and helped me on this adventure. Yeah, and she said, "Nina, please take that back and put it in a bowl."
Did she
really? She did.
Oh,
and
my
so my
gosh.
mom came back with it in a bowl, and so I ate the ice cream in a bowl.
I do most of the cooking around here, and I definitely tried to make it hard on myself. I think the one that put Jason over the edge was I made a pasta dish that had thick red sauce.
Yeah.
He just couldn't handle it.
I'm sorry. The other really hard thing was just making sure my hands were really clean before eating and after eating. It really made me sensitive to that. I had a friend a long time ago who I went out to eat with him once, and he kept his hands kind of up in the air like he was a surgeon. Sterile until he got served, and he wouldn't like touch anything else.
Yeah, I found myself obsessively hand washing.
Good, like Lady Macbeth.
Like to the point where like my nails started splitting a little bit.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. What do you mean? Why?
Well, just because like my hands were getting really dry, so I bought.
No, I don't mean like why were you? Try to follow me here. I wasn't asking why your nails were splitting. That makes sense. Why were you obsessively hand washing and not just washing before you ate?
I was just so much more aware of what was on my hands before eating,
Right.
and it made me realize, why aren't I obsessively hand washing at other times too? I mean, just because I'm using a fork, I don't know who touched the fork before me. Who knows what like poop toucher was holding the fork?
Yeah, totally right. So do you want to go on to what was easy?
I thought I would be spilling a lot more because I'm generally a pretty messy person. The first time I went to an Indian restaurant, I was wearing a white sweater, and I had like just gotten it. I was like, no, why did I do this? And I almost didn't go. But this whole 2 weeks, I didn't spill anything. And maybe it's because I was just more conscientious. I think I'm actually better at eating with my hands than I am with a fork. So my kids, as always, were very supportive and thought all this was hilarious. But my daughter's 5th birthday, her best friend came over, also a 5-year-old, and they were eating pasta and kept spilling little bits of it here and there. And I said to her, "You can use your hands if you want." And the 5-year-old friend says, "No, I have manners." And the thing that was kind of hard was I love to read while I eat. And I just, my hand was dirty, so I couldn't really like touch my
Right,
e-reader.
you can't do any kind of phone work.
Right.
Yeah, so one of the things that was really fun is I went to Ethiopian food, which is one of my favorite favorite types of food to eat. And I went there just because it was easy to eat with my hands, eating injera and stuff.
And
but
it's
also
delicious.
I wanted to talk to the owners there and find out what it was like in Ethiopia about their experiences with eating utensils and that sort of thing.
Let's listen to that interview.
So one of the questions I have, first of all, I love Ethiopian food, and I love being able to come here and eat with my fingers and the injera and all of that.
Yeah.
So I have this assumption that in Ethiopia, silverware isn't very common.
No,
Is that true?
that is true.
That's true. So tell me about that. I mean, like, did your family have silverware growing up, or was it something that was really uncommon?
We do. In our family, we do have silverware, but we use it for spaghetti or any other things beside injera and regular Ethiopian food.
I guess I'm also making an assumption that all you eat is wonderful injera and stuff like this all the time in Ethiopia too, which is a really dumb assumption on my part. Sorry about that.
We do. I mean, I grew up in a middle family and middle class family, and we do eat spaghettis here and there. We do eat rices and all that. We do use silverwares just for that reason. Like you see, majority of Ethiopians are eating injera maybe 3 times a day.
Thank you, Mesfin at the Jabina Cafe.
Let's see. So I've got a question for you.
Okay.
What is your favorite silverware and why? If you were stranded on a desert island.
Probably a knife, because you could do so many things with a knife.
What if it was a smooth butter knife? Does that change your perspective at all?
I could probably knit with a smooth butter knife if I really had to.
Where would you get the wool?
Island sheep.
You have no idea what you're talking about now. You're way...
Scotland's an island. What about you? What's your favorite?
I think I would like to take a chork.
Oh, really?
Yes.
A chainmail fork, huh?
I did some searching on... What? I did some searching on Amazon over the last 2 weeks for chorks. Yeah. And it's very interesting. You can get like a 6-pack of chorks for cheap. So actually, I asked a few people what their favorite silverware would be if they got stuck on a desert island. Maybe we could listen to a couple of those now?
Yeah, let's do that.
A knife. Just in case anything bad happens, I could just cut it in half.
Cut what in half?
A cactus for water.
Oh, that's a good idea. Sure. Why else would you like a knife?
So if anybody tries to kill me, I could just kill them back. A knife, because they're sharp. I want to cut food. Can I name 2 things?
Sure.
The spoon and the knife. They can do almost everything with food.
Thank you, Kai, Elsa Bella, and Elsa.
Let's summarize. What were the things you learned from this experience overall?
Well, the things that I learned was I would definitely be the kind of dandy that would carry around some kind of eating utensil in my pocket because I just can't stand washing my hands that often.
I learned a few things about my marriage.
About the boundaries.
About the boundaries.
Cool.
But it did get better after I rearranged our table settings so that we were perpendicular to each other so that Jason didn't have to look at me. But
Kendra was right across from me the whole time, and I think she was just delighting in that. Maybe if she feels up to it, she can post to Facebook and let us know.
Speaking of Facebook, I hope all of you come visit us there, and please like the podcast. Like us on Facebook at the Station Wagon Podcast. You can see pictures and show notes, other videos and things that we post. Give us your suggestions for future topics. You can also tweet at us at WagonPod on Twitter, or email us your suggestions and notes at wagonpodcast@gmail.com. Also, thank you to the Pleasure Kills for the use of the
Pleasure
song.
Kills. Sorry. Go ahead.
For the use of the song Modern Problems. How about no interrupting?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow. You did it wrong. On our next ride in the station wagon, news has been around forever and will be around forever. It's like air. Everyone needs it. Everyone seeks it out.
And we crave it. I mean, it's such a money-making thing.
Absolutely.
Clearly, there's a market for it.
Right. Relative to the first 2 things we tried to give up, or we did give up, sitting,
swearing,
and using eating utensils, I think this is going to be harder because of that craving that I think we both have.